Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Abe with MysticGenmara.com, a small town mystic from the middle of Idaho. And today I want to do a little book review on a very old text called the Liber Solemnis, or the Sepher Raziel, which is originally produced in the 15th century. The one I'm holding right here, is 2016-ish era. So this is no one knows for sure exactly when this showed up. That's when the first official publication of it showed up. But it's kind of an interesting book. On the back, it says it's referred to as a composition as Sepher Raziel. It claims to be the book given directly to King Solomon by a mysterious prince and sorcerer from the East. Most people believe it was written during the Renaissance period in the 15th and 16th centuries. But the claim is it brings together Kabbalah, Hermetic traditions, and then breaks it into 7 base treaties. And what's kind of fun about this one, which is why it caught my attention, on the back it talks about the subject matter ranges from high occult invocation, names of angels, different Judeo-Christian god aspects, herbal medicine, and the creation of incense for the calling of spirits. And then there's 24 different beasts. There's stones that coincide with the days and all this. So it's not just about working with the spiritual world. It's also about more practical things, which is kind of interesting. And when I say practical, practical for the day, not today. A lot of this stuff today doesn't make any sense. But there's several other texts with similar names, and the particular editor of this one, Tarl, kind of notes that there is several variations. This is the one that he found that worked, and kind of he edited the old English these, thous, and they, that stuff into more appropriate English for today, so it's easier to understand. But it goes through the base principles. There are 9 precepts, goes through what all of those are. And the precepts in this aspect are, if you're going to work with the spirits, if you're going to work higher occult magic, you need to hold yourself to a higher standard. So there is a set of 9 precepts that are really not that far different from like the 10 Commandments or the pillars in Buddhism. So it's a pretty base concept. If you're going to work with this kind of stuff, you need to hold yourself to a higher authority. And then it goes through different aspects of different treaties, different lessons that Solomon learned, and then it goes into the actual, they call it the clavis on page 11 of this version, and it talks about what you would need to be able to work some of the rituals. It talks about the ink in which you will write must be of clean gall made with good white gum and wine, and then a bunch of other stuff. And you have to cook it a very specific way, certain days. I believe it's a 7-day process for that product. And it's all because you're putting effort, you're putting prayer into the product. In today's world of instantaneous everything, I feel like this is a good way to step back into the past, where you get a little bit more of a, why is this important? Why is this sacred? Why are you setting it aside? Even the pen, it says, and the pen which you will write the holy name must be made of green reeds gathered before sunrise. And then it tells you how you're supposed to gather them, how you're supposed to clean them, and how you're supposed to trim them so that they will be proper writing utensils. And each time you do this, you say different prayers. For example, the reed prayer, it would be, where'd it go? Adonai El Shaddai Luvate me ad compendium voluntates meas cum arandi ista. Again, I'm not a Latin person, so that could have been summoning Cthulhu for all I know. But that is the basics of how this first part of this book works. And then it goes through and talks about the different deities you can work with by using the ink pen, drawing different sigils, drawing them out. The one thing I will say, which with this book in particular that is fascinating, this is the only sigil in the entire book. There's no others in here. They do describe the key as the triangle, and it's the signifier of knowledge. And then it gives the description a little more detailed than this. This is just the baseline. And it doesn't do if you've ever read any of the other grimoires out there, they're very distinct. This is the only seal into with misdraw line and all that. This one's more like, okay, so here's what you do. This is how you do it. Have fun, go play. And it's like, wait, what? But in reality, back in the day, a grimoire was literally a recipe book. It wasn't meant to be followed to the letter in most cases. The way occultism has developed over time, we've locked down these symbols are the ones that work, and that's changed a little bit of the dynamic. But this is, written 600 years ago, so they might be onto something back there. And then we move ahead to the different angels that you can work with, and there's several I've never even heard of. One is Zadek. Get back here. And he is temperate because he's between the old and the new aspects. He is hot and moist, sanguine, and in flavor sweet, and draws good aura. So, I mean, you do still work with more angelic hosts. You're not dealing with the darker aspects, thankfully. And then there are a couple of parts in here where it talks about the more dark things that we should not be playing with, and basically saying, these are here, don't touch, which, again, is typical of a lot of the older grimoires. And then we move into the third section, and it talks about Solomon said the wings of birds be members that lead the beings in the place with the desires they may be. So you're going through the birds, the stones, the virtues of different animals and herbs. And in this section, it's actually kind of interesting because there are terms that I had to actually look up because they talk about old stones like jacinth and orichalcolic. I tried saying that one multiple times. But they talk about these different stones, their virtues, and how to use them in different areas, and then also what animals you can etch on them to enhance their power, type of a thing, which is a lot of fun. And then you get into the herb section, and that starts generally, where are we at? Page 35 in this version, and it goes through just some base herbs. It's not really intensive because it's only a 100-page book. The first is rosemary, artemisia. They even talk about, which is interesting, cannabis in here. But the way they reference it is simple. The third herb is cannabis. It is long and its stems can be made into cloth. The virtue of the juice is to anoint yourself and stand before a mirror made of steel, and you can call things into the mirror so you can see them. But it's also the oil is used to bind spirits. So it's not meant for internal use, it's meant for like controlling other things. Interesting way of looking at that. They have carrot as an herb, which is kind of funny. Anise, coriander, and mind you, this was Europe, so there's a lot of the spice trade was still pretty popular back then. And then they get into some like hypericon. Exactly what that is, I'm not sure. I've looked it up, but it's such an odd description that you can't find it from here. But then we get into, there's like 20 herbs, I think 24 herbs. Yep. And then we move into the animals, and a lot of it is different description of his animals. Some are like physically real to us today, some are not, which is interesting when you start digging into that. But you've also got different levels of spirit. There's spirits of the wind, there's spirits of the animals of the earth. The second spirit is very clean, darker than the first. It's like unto the wind. His figure is that will take after some of the four elements which he has joined. So you have to sometimes call other things to get the spirits to show up. Then there's also beasts that they reference as demonic in here. Again, they do not tell you how, but in a lot of the older grimoires, it was assumed, just saying, it was assumed you knew how to do all the prep work just to protect yourself and get things called forth. Where with this book, it's just like, well, here's the recipes. Here's the basics. It's not telling you how to boil water. You already know how to do that. It's not telling you how to turn your oven on. You already know how to do that. This is saying, and this is what you do once you have these other tools. So it's not like an introduction primer. It's more of a intermediate aspect. But you get into the birds, the eagles, the turtle doves. You get into fish, crabs, and dolphins, and this one, which sounds interesting. The fourth fish is bright as a horn between its pale and white. It is called a squid. Most squid I know don't have horns. They have beaks and not horns. So it's things like that where you kind of have to chuckle at how they describe it. Then you get into beasts of like the deer and elk and things like that. Then it starts to break down the Hebrew language, such as Aleph for A, Beth is B, Gamel, and then it goes through the base meanings of what each of those letters are. And the reason that plays a part into a grimoire, especially something like this is a Judeo-Christian grimoire, meaning Jewish and Christian was kind of the Kabbalah aspect of it. And letters and numbers are very powerful in the Kabbalah. Each one has a different meaning. This is a very quick, like, if you're building something, these are the ways you can use it. It doesn't mean that this is concrete or this is the totality, because if you really dig into that, the placement of the letter in a phrase or a word also holds different powers. This is so that you can use them for engraving purposes, getting yourself started down the path. This book is, the basics. We're going to show you some more so you can advance. And it's a lot of introduction to experimentation is how I look at this one. We have the fifth or sixth book, I can't remember, I lost track, and it talks about the different elements of different days. And this is a themamata, which is a confections of good odors, which you will suffume and please creation. So each day you have an incense, we'll make an easier word for that you blend together, and you have them for all 7 days of the week, and then you also have some neutralizing ones. Contrary to the contrary, you put all of these which are foul, and know each of them which has good odors together his spirits, after which the nature and his color and his strength. So once you figure out how they work with the days, you can use them to summon something or to banish it. Again, not giving instructions, just giving you the purpose. But again, you're supposed to, according to this type of text, and I've read a lot of these, you're supposed to already know how to do the other parts. So this is just like, and if you want to work with this one, this is how you do it. But then it breaks down more of the different fumigations and how to do different acts on different days to work with different angels or call forth different aspects of divinity. And he talks about Hermes through this, which ties in a little bit of Greek myth as well. And they don't specifically say, but I'm assuming it's Hermes Trismegistus who wrote the Emerald Tablet and all of that fun stuff. But then there's different spirits that are in Quicksilver, and the treaties of the months, the treaty of cleanliness, which is kind of interesting because not everyone back in the day was okay with, at one point in time there were religious leaders that told people if you bathed more than once a week, you were actually inviting evil into your life. But these guys were saying, no, you need to be clean all the time. Like, you can't be dirty. That's not how you work with the angels or with God. That's not how that works. And so you want to make sure that you yourself are of clean and no ill odor. And so you're doing that with yourself, also with your house. Talks a little bit more about King David and towards the end of it, and different spirits that he worked with at various points in time, which is still a lot of fun. And then we go into Solomon said that all men should regard both good and evil hours and the days of their abilities. And so each hour, when broken down according to the method that they describe in here, and you'll also see this in Wicca and a lot of ceremonial magic as well, each hour has a high frequency, which if it's the first hour of a day of Pisces, it would be the Pisceans, and then the opposite of it, which is its negative, which is the dark or evil aspect. And so you learn to navigate between the two when you're working with these different energies. But then you get into the different heaven layers, which is kind of fun, different directions, north, south, east, and west. And they tell you which angels are with each one. For example, we have from the party of the south, oh good grief, Mahaniel, Gadiel, Hosea, and Verisiel. And there's ones for the east with different prayers that you can call forth to command the different beings. Some of the prayers are short, like again for the south, God, holy, patient, and merciful. But then you have the west, which is a paragraph. So then we get into the virtues and which of the semaphoras are for which virtues and which angels and which divine name of God that you want to work with, because each aspect is written down very clearly in here. And then you have different ones for, like, there's one for Moses in the back. And then we get into the four names of the Creator. And I found that fascinating because most, we were taught, especially if you were raised in a Christian household, that there's one, only one. But if you read Genesis specifically, let us make man in our image. It's not one, there's multiples out there. And up until, depending on who you read, the 13th, a 600 AD 13th century or the mid 1800s, again, depending on who you listen to, prior to those times, it was very commonly understood that the Godhead was a multitude. There was more than one. Kabbalah references a minimum of 10, and other research that I've looked into show a cacophony of different god deities that helped form this place. And so it's interesting that there's four names for the Creator in this text. And it says, there are four names for the Creator. Each is of holiness, and prophets bear them written in precious stones. Again, stones played a huge part in this particular text. And those names are Jahak, Jonah, Eloi, and Yena. And know that whoever has these names upon parchment in Hebrew, that in Hebrew is named Genel in gilded letters with him or on his clothing lacks for nothing, meaning you can call things into your existence by carrying these particular stones with specific names on them. And that pretty much wraps up this book. It's 82 pages long, and I will have it linked in the description if you're curious. But it's kind of a fascinating little introduction to some of the older grimoires. I will say how it was edited makes it extremely easy to read. There's parts of it that are fairly complex, especially the first section, because you're having to go through and understand what these angels do, what their purpose is, and then the formulas for creating some of these products. He did not edit and change the name from the old text to a modern terminology. So there's some of those things that you're going to have to do some digging to figure out what exactly that product is, or what would be a substitute in today's vernacular. Again, this was written in medieval Europe, so if you're in the States or you're in South America or you're in Australia, you may not have the same plants, but is it something you could buy from a supplier or something? So there's a lot of fun with this particular book, but there's also a fair amount of complication with it. But it's complication in that way of, I'm going to show you the basics, but I want you to figure out how to put it all together. Like, it's not as I said with some grimoires, these are the only steps to do this. This one's like, here's the general mess, you can figure it out, which is fun, but also going to be a little dangerous. But again, that's half the fun of doing some of this type of stuff. But let me know if you have ever read this version or any of the other versions that are out there. I'm going to try to acquire some of the other ones and do some comparisons, but right now this is the first one that I ran across. But yeah, let me know if you've ever read them, what your thoughts are on them, or if this is something that you would ever play with on your own time. Let me know in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, all that fun jazz, and I will see you guys in the next video.